that and our guy that's going to join us right now, and this is what I love about Radio Row here in Vegas. You know, you're just going to get a guest that's going to sit down with you who's just dialed in. He's fresh off the gridiron in Mobile. He was smarter than I was and put on a hat and maybe some sunblock. I'm roasted. But Trevor Sikkema, he's got a nice tan going on. Saw him on NFL Network when I was at the Mobile airport. This guy is just crushing it. I'm talking to your co-host, Connor Rogers, a little bit later today. I wanted to pick your brains about
I'm going first.
The
That's
stock
good.
exchange that you guys did on the Cardinals.
Yes.
What was when you deep dived the Cardinals, and before we get into your insight from Mobile, when you deep dived with Connor, what was the thing that kind of surprised you the most in your studies?
Well, so when we go through that exercise, we not only want to do so from an NFL draft perspective, because we end every Fix Your Franchise episode with a team-centric 3-round mock draft, but we want to set things up before then, right? Because a lot of people talk about we like this player, but if it doesn't fit really like where the team is going or what the team is doing, then that can sometimes be a deal breaker. And so when we get into the Cardinals, what I love about them is I did not think that this team was very good on paper going into the season. And they outplayed their expectations in a big way. And so now I think the lens that you view the Cardinals is very different than what it was to start the year. Because I think a lot of people looked at that and were like, man, all right.
Where's the talent?
Yeah, like where's the talent?
Right.
But it's like, all right, 2, 3, 4-year rebuild here, maybe at best. And now we're in the situation where instead you look at the roster and you go, a lot of good young pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Like now this obviously looks very different. You know, you got 2 first-round picks. I know they were hoping one of those first-round picks was going to be a little bit higher than it ended up being.
CJ Stroud.
But, you know, they still have those 2 first-round picks. They have a lot of flexibility. Really love what I saw from Monty Austinford last year and how he was very calm and how he navigated his first draft in charge. And so
he was a killer.
What surprised me was it's just, you know, you look at this roster, and everybody I think going into the season on paper thought this is one of the worst rosters in the NFL. We got a mock draft simulator over at PFF, and we had the Cardinals with the first 2 picks, 1 and 2. We were like, all right, this team's not going to be good, and the Texans aren't going to be good, and both of them ended up being better than we expected. So that, to me, is what surprised me the most is some of those older contracts as well. You can get off of those a little bit. You can continue that youth movement, get some new guys in there, and I just what surprised me is that flexibility and youth movement that they have in Arizona is going really strong.
Do you give the credit more to Monty Austinford and able to, and this was not even, I mean, he got the job basically this time of year, a couple of weeks change, right? Didn't have his full scouting staff in place.
Yeah.
And really knocked the draft out of the park. Or Monty or Jonathan Gannon, his ability to coach these guys up, and they really leaned on playing rookies. They had 13 players active on the roster that were first-year players.
Yeah, I mean, it takes 2 to tango. Like, it takes 2 to change a franchise. It really does. You have to have good continuity with the general manager and the head coach. But I look at what Jonathan Gannon was able to do with what was given to him, and I think Monty did a good job giving him maybe higher quality ingredients than he thought that he was going to get in year 1, but he was the chef, right? He was the one out there who was baking the cake, if you will, making the meal. And early parts of the season, like I'll just let you guys in on it. I'm in a survivor pool, and I picked against the Cardinals multiple times, and they burned me. Yeah. They ended up getting that win against Dallas, and I picked Dallas in this game. I was like, oh, there's no way. And I think that is a funny way to kind of encapsulate how hard Jonathan Gannon had that group playing, especially with out Kyler Murray. Mm-hmm. You know, like you've just got unknowns at quarterback. I think you're going into the season, all of a sudden it's like, all right, Colt's out of there. And so now you're starting Josh Dobbs and you're rotating quarterbacks in and out until you get Kyler back. And so to me, there was a lot of inexperience. There was a lot of youth. There was a lot of new guys who were there. And you didn't even have your quarterback as something that you could consistently lean on throughout the entire season. And for them to have the kind of competitiveness every single week. Okay, yeah, it didn't result in as many wins as they wanted to, but they were playing tight with some really good football teams throughout the season, not just the beginning of the season. So my hat tips to Jonathan Gannon and what he was able to do with those players.
When you look at this upcoming draft and all the pieces, and obviously you have your mock out there, what kind of player do you think that they're going to identify in the later rounds that you think, that maybe a person that you saw in Mobile, you're like, he'd be a really good fit with Arizona?
Yeah, so I think about some of the needs that the Cardinals have, and I think that offensive tackle's a need. The interior defensive line is a need for them. Really, just good talent along both trench lines. I think people will tell you that they need to continue to invest in that. But I think players at the skill positions, these major difference makers. I'm sure y'all talk a lot about Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors.
Wait, who?
And Romo.
Right. His name again?
Right. So,
should I write it down?
Son of a former Hall of Famer. In case you lived under a rock, Maserati Marv, as he goes by, from Gus Johnson. But anyway, so I know that you guys talk a lot about a difference maker in the passing game. But when I think about day 2 attack strategy, I would love to see them get another really good quality corner. So if you talk about a guy who I've watched over the last couple of weeks in the Senior Bowl, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., somebody who from Louisville, he was a transfer over from Florida State. That dude might have been the biggest riser of anybody in Mobile. I mean, he had 3 reps in a row consecutively in one-on-ones, which one-on-ones very skewed to the offensive side of things. Wide receivers are supposed to win DB wide receiver one-on-ones. DB doesn't have any help. He's got no inside help. He's got no help over the top, and he doesn't know where the route is. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. had 3 reps in a row against all different shapes and sizes of receivers that he not only had tight enough coverage to run the route for these guys, but he gave himself to have an interception as well. And just that type of confidence to be dropped into a brand new environment, brand new teammates, brand new coaches, to just go out there and say, nah, I'm still the best. I mean, that to me speaks volumes of the type of corner that you want on your team and somebody that can produce as a rookie. So I like Garrett Williams a lot. I really do. I thought the injuries, if he didn't have the injuries coming out of college, I think he would have been drafted even a little bit better. So I like that selection. I do like Keitrell Clark as a potential starter.
Louisville guy.
At the nickel, and a feisty dude, man. And so I'd love to see them. Jarvis Brownlee Jr., he's just kind of a name as day 2. Keep an eye out for him. I think that he could be a good starter at the NFL level.
It makes sense, Trevor Sikkema, Pro Football Focus. It makes sense. Obviously, Gannon dips into his alma mater, and Keitrell Clark gets that competitive guy who can be a depth guy probably down the road. I don't know about starting outside corner, but Brownlee, when you looked up at the screen in Mobile, they had I think it's the Zebra Technologies just trackers, and Brownlee had covered the most ground out of anybody. You saw that he was the one that was working the hardest out there, and I think that's probably where the Cardinals will have to go, because Quinyon Mitchell was unbelievable last week.
Yes.
And I think to the detriment of teams late in the first round, because I don't think it's a possibility any longer. Where do you have him now as far as your defensive backs?
Yeah, so Arizona's, what are they picking, 26, 27? 27. So I think that we certainly would have seen Quinyon Mitchell's name in mock drafts for the Cardinals in the first round at pick 27. But I agree with you, man. I don't think he gets there.
Yeah.
Quinyon's tape over the last 2 years has been fantastic. Cornerback out of Toledo. He's got good size to him. Track speed.
Poor Brandon Rice. He was picking on him last week.
Dude, I mean, you go back to his background as well. He's got a track background, legit speed. 10.60 100-meter dash in high school. So that is some crazy fast speed. And you see it on tape. The click and close ability from him. The question mark with him is Toledo didn't really put him in press coverage very much. They only kept him in off coverage. So it was okay, why? Is this just the scheme that you have as a team, or are you protecting him from something? Does he not like getting his hands on guys? Does he not like being physical? Does he not like playing with his back to the ball? Those are all things that you have to think about. And so I believe it was 437 he played 437 coverage snaps this past year. Only 20 of them came in a press coverage alignment. Wow. So going into the Senior Bowl week, the reason why I love this event is because you get to see these players in those areas. The coaches do a great job of oh, okay, you're a center. Let's see what you do at guard. Oh, okay, you're a tweener at tackle. Let's see what you do at guard. Inside out with defensive line as well. And then when it comes to coverage, you played a lot of off coverage in college. Okay, let's see what you do in press. He played a lot of press coverage in Mobile. Beautifully. Shut these dudes down left and right. So, I mean, that basically answers the only question you had about him. And to me, now he is at a point where if he's going to be an Arizona Cardinal, it's because they will have traded down from 4 to something around the top 10, and you take him as CB1 in this draft.
I know I went to the well about late round draft picks, but selfishly, I got to ask you about my boy Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. I'm a big Beebe fan.
Okay.
Where do you see him translating into the next level? Does he have what it takes to be able to perform at a high level, maybe on the interior line.
He is a really smart offensive lineman. Now, he started his career as a defensive lineman, so he just understands trench play really well, and I think that you see that from him. The footwork, it's a little bit heavier. It's a little bit slower. He's not necessarily, a brute when it comes to strength, like just totally being able to get a guy off of his spot. But he understands angles. He understands how to get across guys' face. He understands leverage so very well. So even when he goes up against guys that I'll watch their defensive line tape and I go, okay, you should handle Cooper here. Like, you should be able to manipulate him if he gets his hands in the right spot and if he gets the right leverage. Like, sometimes there's nothing these stronger guys can do. And I think O-line IQ is something that is an underrated part of evaluating offensive linemen. And to me, I think the athletic limitations probably are going to make BB a third, fourth round pick, something like that. At least that's what I have in my assessment of him. But I do think he has that starting caliber guard ability. Not sure that you could play him in tackle in a pinch. If somebody goes down during the game, he's got that left tackle experience. I think his home's going to be more of at guard. I just think he's built more like a guard. But to me, he is somebody who will improve the IQ of your offensive line, which is very, very important for a unit that it takes all five guys working together at the same time to handle some really good rushes in the NFL, the stunts, the games, the twists, all that, whatever you want to call it. And so he, to me, is somebody who I just think the way that he views the game comes from such a high IQ level.
Love it.
I always like to fire up, and you've been always generous with your time, and you joined us, and we fire up the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator. We're not going to do that right now, but our friends over at Empire Today, they sponsor our mock drafts, and we're building our Empire Today with EmpireToday.com/PHNX. And just real quick, on the fly, seems like 1, 2, 3 quarterbacks.
Yes.
Right?
It seems like it, yeah.
Maserati Marv at 4 to the Cardinals.
Yes, yeah,
and
Maserati Marv.
Let's try to forecast 27. And I feel like it depends on what your philosophy is. And I see some people like, well, why don't the Cardinals trade out of 27? I think there's so much value as far as that fifth-year option, especially for a rebuilding team, to have that, right?
Yeah.
And what are they really going to get in return? They've already got 12 to 13 picks in this draft. Like, what would your philosophy be at 27 and then potentially coming back at 35 for our mock?
Yeah, I think because those picks are so close to one another, I think certainly corner, right? Yeah. Corner comes into play depending on how the cornerback group falls, and we could have 4 or 5 first-round caliber corners that you might be able to have your chance to get a really good one there. So we talked about corner already, but I do think you probably want to look trenches first and foremost, right? There's an opportunity when you're at 27. I understand that Paris Johnson Jr. has been playing on the right side of the line, but depending on what happens with DJ Humphries, you can move Paris Johnson over to that left tackle spot where he played at Ohio State. And I think there's a handful of right tackle options that could be ripe at 27. Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, Amarius Mims from Georgia, J.C. Latham from Alabama. There's just a lot of guys who have that right tackle experience who might make it to 27 that you got to really think about. I'd say on defensive line as well, a Braylon Trice from Washington if you want more of an edge rusher, if you want to get another edge rusher in there. But I think interior defensive line, I look at Jerzon Newton from Illinois, who seems to be falling on mock drafts. And
why is that? Just because he's not active?
I think it's, it's a little bit of like, what have you done for me lately kind of a thing. And he just say, hey, he hasn't been at these events, but he's got a little bit shorter arms. I think he's just a little bit more of a fire hydrant type of build, as they say. So he's not going to, when you measure him up against a Byron Murphy from Texas, Murphy is strong as hell, and he's got these vines for arms. And so you go, okay, where are the limitations with this guy? He's young, all that. So I understand why people are going to have him as DT1, but that doesn't make Newton any less of a great interior defensive line prospect. So I would throw him in that mix too. So that's probably where I would look. I would look to the trenches at 27 and then 34, and those are a handful of names to look out for.
I do have one more thing before you take off. So 2 different questions, okay? Because we've been talking about this quite a bit. The separation between Maserati Marv, Odunze, and Neighbors. Is it vast? Is it small? To me, I think it's minimal. Especially to Odunze. I'm a big Odunze fan. I don't like Malik Neighbors, but that's a different story.
All right. So, good thing. It's a good thing there's a buffer. There's a buffer here between us because I love Malik. So
that question first.
Okay. Yeah. So look, I don't think the gap is that far. I really don't. I've said this before. In any other wide receiver class, if you take Odunze and Malik Neighbors and you just plop them in any other draft, they're probably wide receiver 1, right? There's just not that many classes, and I've gone over some of the recent draft classes that we've had. There's just not very many where these guys wouldn't be considered. Like even Jamar Chase's class, like we're talking about one of the best receivers in the NFL. Jamar Chase is a prospect coming out was that similar level to what we think about these guys. So I don't think the gap is that far, but that's in no way a Marvin Harrison Jr., like you should think less about him. It really is just the fact that this wide receiver group is special.
And then the last one is just Jordan Morgan last week. Didn't have the greatest Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
His measurables came back. He has, the fire hydrant arms, as you would say.
Right.
Our guy, Johnny Venerable, is completely out on Jordan Morgan, even though he was in there. I'm a big U of A guy. I graduated from there. So I have a vested interest in how Jordan Morgan does. I would like to see the Cardinals at least entertain the thought of drafting him at 27 if he should be there. What are your thoughts overall on Jordan Morgan?
No, I still do like Jordan Morgan. I don't think he's going to be a first-round pick now, but multiple picks with ammunition on day 2. I think certainly top of the second round. He's in that conversation as well. And all right, so the shorter arms, we figured that he'd have shorter arms, and you do see that on tape. Like he does lose with length quite a bit, and I think power is the issue that people had with him when he was at Arizona versus what they wanted to see from him at the Senior Bowl. And the reason why he struggled so much is there were a lot of really powerful defensive linemen at this year's Senior Bowl, and they were kind of getting the better out of him. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't, because you've been playing tackle for Arizona, right? So you got to be a little bit lighter on your feet. You got to be able to handle things one-on-one. If he fully committed to guard at the next level, which I think would be a good home for him, you're probably strength training a little bit different. You're probably playing it a little bit different of a weight. You're probably getting a little bit stronger anyways. Then you've got the quick footwork to go along with it because you've already played tackle, and the arm length's not that big of an issue, as big of an issue, I should say, for when you move into guard. So I do think that he is a really good football player. I don't think a poor Senior Bowl just totally erases some really good tape. And I think he's a warrior, man. Tore his ACL in November of 2022, comes back and plays this season. I mean, like, there's something to that. This dude clearly loves ball, wants to be out there, and wanted to put his best foot forward to show NFL teams that he was healthy and that he could be a starting caliber offensive lineman. So not sure he's going to still get that first round buzz after what we saw in Mobile, but he's still a good football player.
And
I think he could be a starter.
He's an absolute dog. That's how they build him in Tucson.
There you go.
Did you have any thoughts on any of the other U of A guys that were out at in Mobile?
So Cowing is the one that I really liked a lot going into the week, and then he kind of struggled a little bit early on. He had a couple of drops early on where I was like, damn, you got to haul those in. I mean, just from like the sheer size, it's like people will knock you for anything when you are that low on the percentile chart when it comes to height and weight. But you turn on his tape, and I mean, just no matter where he's been in college football, he has been a separation machine. And as we've seen so many times recently, I think Tank Dell is the example that everybody loves to go to now, but like there are players all around the league. You don't have like small players that are excellent separators. That's what it's about, right? The wide receiver play is about what? Getting open, catching the football. If you could do both those things really well, I think you're going to find a place in today's game.
Absolutely.
Trevor Sikkema loves ball, and you got to follow him on Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey. Make sure you're reading his work, Pro Football Focus. The NFL Stock Exchange episode with you and Connor. It's over an hour. It's all about your Arizona Cardinals. The opener. It's fantastic. Poor Rondell Moore taking a couple of ricochet shots.
Oh, did he? Oh,
no. But running cardio, basically.
Oh, yeah. We got to get my guy the ball. Like, I loved Rondell when he was coming out of the draft, and I think that Arizona is a good spot for him. We just got, he's out here doing like Peloton classes, man. Like, we got to throw my guy the football. Come on.
It's a must-watch. What do you got coming up content-wise that people need to seek out?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. Everything over at PFF.com. Anybody out there who wants to run their own mock drafts, I know you guys do a lot of that here on this show. You can do so over at PFF.com. We got a sale going on right now. If you want the full unlocked mock draft simulator, 30 MDS, you can get 30% off on that. And then, like you said, after your listeners listen to this wonderful show, if they want to come hang out with Connor and I on the NFL Stock Exchange channel, that's where you can find us.
It's essential listening for Cards fans. Trev, always great, man.
Appreciate it,
Thanks, bud.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you guys.
Trevor Sikkema, PFF.com, having a blast out here. Dude's a wealth of knowledge as far as that NFL draft.
That was tremendous.
It is.
Dude, I got goosebumps, man. I got hyped off of that.